Hi all, I'm Joe, and my life is a nightmare made flesh. And the worst thing is that my parents are responsible for it. You see, I've been living as a slave for a couple of years now. I got kinda lucky that I wasn't sold to some Asian or African country, yet my life's not a picnic either. I became a slave due to my mom and dad making a lot of debts, and I'm forced to work off those debts. Well, yeah, mom and dad basically sold me into slavery, and that's about it. Not long ago, I lived in a room with 9 other men. Surprisingly, the slavers owned many people, yet I was the only underage person there. The slavers gave us food twice per day and let us clean out on Sundays. We were made to work day after day without any rest. Of course, no one allowed me to study. School of any kind was totally out of the question. I had to work a lot, wasn't allowed to ask any questions or become ill. I had to work off my parents' debts to the penny. According to my captors, that'd take me 15 years. My life changed only recently, and only because I was insanely lucky. Want to know how this happened to me? My family's been living on credit cards ever since I can remember. Of course, mom and dad both had jobs, but they always craved for something that couldn't be bought with their salaries alone. Credit cards were a godsend to them. I'm certainly not a genius myself, yet even I understand that you really shouldn't take a credit to put down another big credit. Of course, no one could have ever said that our family was actually dirt poor. We lived in a rich-looking house, mom and dad had cars, we always dressed up with style and had the latest phone models. I even tried to apply to child services and tell them about mom and dad's actions, yet they saw no problems in my life. According to them, I was just an unthankful, spoiled child, nothing more. Sooner or later, mom or dad would have got into trouble. The debts grew to gigantic proportions. The banks refused to provide my parents with loans, yet mom and dad never actually tried paying off the debts using their salaries. Instead, they just kept spending money on useless things. I begged them to become more responsible. I tried hiding some of their money and even got a side job myself to try and pay off some of the debts. Yet nothing worked, and eventually I grew tired. I was sure that I was bound to enter the orphanage sooner or later. The state would definitely deprive mom and dad of parental rights, right? Well, the situation turned out to be different. My parents used some obscure law. Turned out that one of my parents was legally a disabled person or something like that, so that the banks were unable to take our house. Of course, they took almost all of our other belongings. I was sure that it would teach mom and dad something about responsibility. Unfortunately, I was gravely mistaken. Eventually, I learned that my parents took a line of credit on the house. This time, they got the money not from banks, but from some shady people. Those people didn't only provide mom and dad with cash, they even cleared all my parents' previous debts. My parents were over the moon, yet I expected the worst. Eventually, those shady men came for their money, and my parents couldn't offer them anything. So they gave me to their lenders. Those bandits literally kidnapped me, and mom and dad were totally okay with that. And that's where the real nightmare began. It turned out that my parents were really glad because of the bandits' decision. After all, now mom and dad were debtless and free to get another loan. And as for me, now when my parents betrayed me, I felt completely at a loss. Thankfully, the local foreman became my patron because I reminded him of his own son or something like that. Besides, I turned out to have a talent for building and construction, so now I live in a warm room and work on construction projects instead of carrying dirty bags and stuff. The foreman teaches me himself, and I'm actually kind of interested in this profession. And recently, he gifted me with an old laptop and allowed to use the local Wi-Fi. Now I can communicate with the world and even engage in teleeducation projects. Well, I'm still a slave, and I'm gonna be a slave for years to come. Yet here I have far better comfort than at home. I won't tell you anything about credits and debts. I just want you to know that working hard is the best way to get out of any trouble. After all, if I wasn't dutiful and attentive, I'd be just a slave. Yet now, I actually have a chance to become a professional and get out of slavery much sooner.
Hello there, I'm Linda, this ungrateful little snot's mom. My husband and I gave our kid everything we could, yet he still complains. We weren't perfect parents, of course. It's impossible to attain perfection, you know. But we always tried our best to give our son everything we could. Unfortunately, we never had enough money. My husband and I had a little baby and a large house to take care of. Yet both of us were only 22, and we wanted to live a nice life. Not eke out meager living. We didn't want to spend all our money on diapers and food alone. That's when we got our first credit cards. At first, the loans were small. My hubs needed a new phone, and I wanted a laundry machine. Have you ever tried to take care of a baby without it? I needed that laundry machine so badly. We soon realized that credit cards were a literal godsend. Of course, we were forced to use both of our salaries for repayment of interest on the credits. Still, we had enough money to live the life of our dreams. We managed to lead such a wonderful life for 16 years straight. When the employees of one bank would start asking us too many questions, we just opened a credit card at another bank, paid off the previous credit, and used the rest of our money for our own sake. A lot of my friends lived like that as well, and some even bought houses on credit. So my husband and I were really proud of the fact that our house was 100% our own, not owned by the bank. And then, all of a sudden, all the banks stopped approving further loans. They even canceled our credit cards. Just as I was ready to buy myself another designer gown. Just imagine how embarrassed I felt when I was at the shop and my card would not go through. Oh, nightmarish. Of course, I tried to fix the situation, but the banks were adamant. They told us to pay back all of our debts or else they'd take everything we owned. I screamed, I cried, but nothing worked. The collectors came the very next day and took all of our furniture. It all happened right in front of the neighbors, too. We were so embarrassed. There was nothing we could do. The police actually laughed at me when we came to ask them for help. They told me that we had no right to argue at all. But soon my husband found a way for us to get money. Oh, he's such a smart man. He contacted some men who agreed to give us some fat loans against the house. Of course, I agreed. We needed that money. When those men came and told us that they needed not our house, but our son, we were ecstatic. You see, they promised to provide him with clothes and food, and even give him work. And all we had to do was not call the police. Just perfect. Besides, Joe's allowance always costed us too much to begin with. I even tried to explain everything to that ungrateful brat, but he refused to listen to me. Of course, his opinion never really mattered, but he still should have shown us some gratitude for our effort to do him good. Still, our life's so much better now. We can even get new credit cards to buy all new furniture for our house. The neighbors seem to despise us for selling our son. Stupid oafs. Honestly, they're probably just jealous that we live such a carefree lifestyle. I pity them.
Hi, I'm Jake. I'm doing well in school. Wouldn't you work hard if someone paid you for that? Yeah, I can imagine your astonishment. And you know what? I'm pretty sure there's someone in your class who's also being paid for good grades. And it's not the ordinary nerd you got used to. Just take a look. And now I will tell you a story of the hatred for my mother. Yeah, you heard me right. I hate my mother for what she's done to me. I was in the 5th grade when my mother asked me whether I wanted to have pocket money all the time. And not just an ordinary amount, but a lot more than my classmates. As an 11-year-old boy, I was very pleased to hear that. Well, anyone would want that. Immediately, I imagined all the opportunities such money would give me. I would be able to amaze girls, buy clothes, and all sorts of things, and not just the ordinary lunch in the dining room. I would be the person I've always wanted to be. I imagined that picture in my head and said yes, but I didn't think of the consequences I would face. We've talked for about 10 minutes, and she told me about all the parts of the deal. All I had to do is have only A's and B's. Obviously, A's would be the best. In case I get an A, she would pay me $500. For a B, it would be $400. And if I get a D or an F, I would pay her 200 or 300, respectively. So for an F, I had the worst punishment. All the payments were made at the end of the year. It meant I would have a lot of cash I could spend the way that I wanted to. Can you imagine that? All summer, I would have a fine living. I could only dream of such a life. So I started to study as hard as possible. Something went wrong. From a fun-loving, communicative boy that used to hang out with everyone, I turned into an angry, aggressive nerd, hated by the whole class. I've never let anyone cheat off my papers because I knew the value of my time. I've never helped anyone during tests because I knew it could lower my own grade. I've even checked that. In case I've helped someone, I got a D or B. And if B was a good thing for my budget, a D turned to be a great outflow. And don't get me started on Fs. That's why I had to be the best. And I tried to. At the end of 5th grade, I only had 3 Bs. And I also saved my pocket money. I almost didn't eat in school, trying to end the year out ahead. And I made it. In fact, I earned more than all my classmates combined. Anyway, they didn't earn their money, they just begged their parents. My way was much harder and quite challenging, but I was exhausted. Summer break came, and all I wanted was to get some sleep. I wanted to sleep all the time because my energy was spent on studying. I stopped seeing my friends, though I wanted to go hiking for them to see how cool I was. As a result, I decided to quit such a system. No amount of money is worth going through all this physical and mental struggle. So I told my mother about my decision. She asked me to wait until the end of summer vacation and then we'd deal with that. I tried to calm down and live through that summer, but I didn't know how to do that because I was used to studying all the time. It was rather strange and unusual not to work hard and earn money. That process became an important part of my everyday routine. I lost my ability to sleep well. Even when my body finally passed out, I had dreams about studying. I dreamed about earning a lot of money. And in my dream, I was smiling all the time with that fake, shiny white smile. But my eyes, I had those crazy eyes which couldn't see the real world. Basically, I couldn't live my life during summer vacation. I was sitting at home, playing video games, rejecting calls from remaining friends. Then they stopped calling me. I became a recluse. All I wanted was to start studying and earning money as soon as possible. By the way, all the money I spent on cool clothes and a console. I entered the door of my school in the beginning of the year wearing those fancy clothes. Surely everyone complimented my style. Thankfully, my classmates forgot how obnoxious I was during the last year and started hanging out with me again. They praised my clothes, but the pleasant time went not for long. After a week or so, everything got back. Study, study, study. My payment didn't increase, although the responsibility expanded a lot. I felt that I should do something about it, so I asked my mother again. She appreciated my ideas. She said I'll be a good merchant one day. Although she encouraged me, she didn't raise the payment. Also, Mom suggested something. If I became a big shot at school by participating in public affairs, I'll get a bonus at the end of the year. To be honest, I got very excited when I heard that, so I accepted the offer and started to study. Also, I engaged in different school events and competitions. I learned to sing, dance, sculpt, and so on. All that lasted for several years, until at the end of the 9th year when I was hospitalized. For the first time, I lost consciousness at the age of 14. It happened at home. Thankfully, my father was there and called an ambulance. Do you want to know what happened? Oh, that was a rather short but fascinating story. Mom didn't give me any of my money. She just came to me and said she decided to end the experiment. She was pleased with the result, and I appeared to be the best lab rat one could even write books about. Do you understand what happened? The whole year I strived for nothing. That was too much for me, and I just passed out. Doctors told my parents I had nervous and physical exhaustion. Over recent years, I turned into a walking dead because I wasn't eating well enough and drained myself. I snacked on the run, trying to keep up with everything. In the end, I ruined my stomach, bowel, and kidney. My father was shocked. He had no idea about our multi-year deal until I told him everything. I'm 15 now, and I'm almost a cripple. My recovery goes very slowly. I can swallow only soft food, just like an old man, and it's hard for me to walk, but I'm doing my best. All my classes are forgotten. Father forbade me to even think about my textbooks. Parents divorced. After that, Mom and Dad had a huge fight, and he left. So now I should live with my mom, though I can't even see her. That's it. So, what can you tell me about it? She ruined my life. I'm like a ghost, though I'm only 15, and I don't want to talk to her anymore. But how should I do this if we're living together? After my recovery, I'll definitely tell her she's a nasty and insidious woman that used her son for her needs. And I'll try to sue her if I get the possibility. What would you do being in my shoes?
Hi, I'm Emma, Jake's mother. Yeah, I know that situation is rather controversial, but what can I do? To be honest, I didn't want that for my son when I offered him my deal. Just think about it. He's sure I'm a monster, but several years ago, he was absolutely happy about my proposal. And who wouldn't be? Everyone wants to have such money when you're only 11. I also think so. My main goal of work was to help him understand that every piece of work should be paid for. Money is a great resource that helps one to get what he wants, and labor can dignify your body and soul. I wished my son to grow smart and independent. I wanted him to be the one who knows what it's like to earn money from childhood, with the help of his knowledge and skills. Anyway, he'll obtain that knowledge for many years. Isn't it a good bonus? He gains knowledge, and for that he earns money. As for me, that deal was genius. I hoped he wouldn't be such a loser as his father, being unable to gain a good salary. I'm so happy we divorced. Well, it's not about that. In my wildest dreams, I brought up a genius who would have a possibility to apply for any college, gain any job, or even start his own business. He could have been anything. He gave up. He is a loser just like his father. For several years, I was following his achievement, and I was so proud. All my friends knew about his success. He was a manifestation of myself. I could have been like him if my parents invented such a method. I even wanted to patent this idea, but my system failed. He fainted. I just interrupted my experiment to start writing a book, and he failed me. How did he do that? Why didn't he think straight? How could he misinterpret all my messages and desires? And he ruined everything so fast and simple. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. My husband dumped us. Can you imagine that? He criticized me for my genius upbringing method and left. And we were together for 20 years straight. They are so weak. And they are worth nothing. He said I've hurt our son. But he is weak. What could I do about that? I wanted the best for him. And what do I do now? I have neither a husband nor a strong marriage. Nothing. And that is the punishment for my genius. Can you imagine what Jake wants to do? As soon as he recovers, he will sue me because he hates me. Seriously? That's nonsense. I raised him. I encouraged him, trying to make him rich and smart. I suppose he doesn't have my genes. I can't believe my son to do such a stupid thing. Well, we'll speak again when he gets better. I think it's just exhaustion. I still have several tricks to make him study according to my scheme. I should achieve great success. What do you think? Am I right doing this to my son?
Hey everybody, my name is Rose, and I have a terrible and kind of terrifying story about UFOs and kidnapping. Now, I'm not really sure what was going on, but I'm pretty confident that something or someone lives in my head. Everything began quite a long time ago. I don't remember the exact date, but I do remember that I was washing my hair and I felt something weird. As if like a knot or a lump appeared under my skin on my head. I flipped out, wouldn't you? I examined myself in the mirror, but saw nothing. The back of my head looked as usual, though my hair prevented me from getting a closer look. The weirdest part was, though, that when I tried to feel around for the lump, it wasn't there. I wish I knew what I was in for then. Maybe I wouldn't have kept silent. But I did. I thought it was nothing. I mean, I couldn't see anything anymore. It must have, I don't know, just been my imagination running wild after a long day. Maybe I got a head pimple. I think that's a thing. Maybe while I was washing up, I got a knot in my hair. I mean, maybe it was nothing. I figured I ought to just forget everything that happened, but just in case, the next day I visited our school nurse. Hell, maybe it was lice. We went on a hike in the forest not too long ago. Maybe I caught a few freeloading pests. But the nurse found nothing. She advised me to take some vitamins. She also prescribed a sleeping medication, thinking that maybe it was stress because of the exams, and I was seeing things. After that, I fully calmed down. What did I have to worry about after all? And then later, I was combing my hair and I felt the lump again. It got caught on my comb. There was some blood and I felt some pain. At that time, I couldn't chalk it up to my hallucinatory mistakes. I definitely had something in my head. And, when you're kind of panicked, one of the first things you think of are all of the terrifying stories you've heard as a child. And I couldn't help but think about, maybe the government is putting experiments in my head, or maybe I got abducted by a UFO. I imagined all those metal plates and human heads, bright lights, traces in the fields. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been quite enthusiastic about paranormal things, ghosts, aliens, stuff like that. I'm quite familiar with eyewitness accounts of UFO abductions, and thinking about my prior knowledge of all things sci-fi, the picture began to fall into place. The rational part of my brain kept telling me that there's gotta be a more logical reason, but when I finally found my way to the hospital, I had sneaked in because I didn't want everyone to think I was crazy. The doctor told me that I was totally okay. I didn't have any parasites or microchips put in me by some green little men. He asked me not to bother busy people with my weird fantasies. Seems to me like that doctor needs to brush up on his bedside manners. Anyway, he said my weird lump was just a usual growth on my skull. Apparently, the skull isn't as smooth as a bowling ball as I once thought. It has different lumps and curves, and that can be traced under the hair. And some people have different shapes and different lumps and bigger than others, and you can often see them on the head of bald people. So I shouldn't worry about anything. And instead, it would be better for me to study biology and anatomy at school thoroughly. Kinda rude, dude. Kinda rude. But, I trusted the doctor. I even Googled the image of the human skull and saw that it really wasn't smooth. The only weird thing is that your skull tends to stay in place. But I'm pretty confident this lump moves around. Another doctor told me that absolutely nothing moves in my head. Probably not even my brain. Which I think he was just calling me stupid, now that I think about it. Dude, what's with these doctors? Ugh. The only thing that could move was my skin, because, it's kind of elastic and it moves around the body. The doctor touched his own head with his fingertips and showed his skin folding. And again, his words proved me wrong, at least for a little while. But as I was leaving the hospital with some doubts in my head, I noticed something. I realized all this information about skulls and how the skin moves was complete nonsense. Something alien and strange was in my head, and it was moving, changing its position bit by bit, and it was definitely a foreign object, but no one would listen to me. So I abandoned all attempts to keep my little problem a secret. I went to my parents and told them about everything. The next hospital I visited was under their supervision. I was hoping maybe having some adults would put these gosh darn doctors in their place and actually run some tests on me. But they couldn't find anything either, and it was, getting kind of awful. I was getting a little sick of these doctors, to be honest. But it was kind of creepy knowing that something foreign or even alien was living inside my head. It's much worse when no one believes you. It freaked me the hell out. I needed help, and not compassion or jokes about my own stupidity, okay? I needed surgeons to cut out this alien chip before they come back and abduct me. But no, they just wanted me to go see a therapist like they could think the problem away. Soon, everyone began treating me like the local village idiot. No one believed me. They thought I was having a mental breakdown, just freaking out, and they would laugh at me. They advised me to visit a madhouse, all of them, even my classmates and my neighbors. People I thought were my friends, and not to mention those doctors. Once I thought everything would change, but then the reporters came and I was interviewed. I was just trying to get my story out. Maybe someone would believe me. Maybe someone would know what was going on, but everything became much worse because our house turned into candy for mad pseudoscientists and ufologists, and our whole town verified me as a crazy person. I practically became a tourist trap. So, there you have it. That's my story. Now I'm just some psycho, and everyone is pointing at me. I don't know what to do, or where I should go, or who I should talk to. I'm starting to give in and believe in my own madness. The thing inside my head is still there. I can feel it every time I brush my hair, but if everyone's sure it's nothing, maybe I did make it up. I can't live like this anymore, though. I don't know what's real or what's fake. I don't know who I am anymore. Sometimes I think of taking the dang chip out myself. When I have scissors or scalpel in my hand, fear grips over. I'm terrified of pain. And I can't get pain medicine without a prescription, and everyone thinks I'm insane, so I can't get a prescription. So for now, I have to shelve those thoughts, but it doesn't stop them from constantly entering my mind. Well, at least I can hope that one day when the aliens do finally come, they will command all of us chosen people with chips in our heads to rise up against humankind. My parents and all those who laughed at me will understand that it was their own damn fault.
Hello everyone, my name is Megan and I'm Rose's mother. To be more precise, I'm the mother of that mad girl who says she was kidnapped by a UFO. The only thing is, I know something that no one knows. I keep silent because I don't want all the world to discover the truth which I've hidden for 10 years. The thing is that when Rose was 6, a tragedy happened. We used to live in the other town in a big apartment on the top floor overlooking the river. Sometimes I'd forgotten to close the windows. My daughter was an independent and smart kid, and she'd never done something dangerous. She'd never put her fingers in the outlet, or hugged the stray dogs. Also, she'd know that it was dangerous to sneak out onto the balcony. Anyway, so she was just a kid, and everything that happened was only my own fault. One beautiful day, I needed to buy something right away. According to the state law, one can't leave the child alone at home, and I was supposed to call for a babysitter. But, really? The shop was not far from the house, and I was going to be out for no more than 15 minutes. What could happen? I don't know why Rose went out onto the balcony. Maybe she saw something interesting or she just got bored, and then everything went like in some awful nightmare. The open window. We had big picture floor-to-ceiling windows. Little child alone in the room. When I came back, I saw the crowd in front of the house, and also the ambulance and the police cars. And also, I saw my girl lying on the ground. It seemed like a never-ending nightmare. The doctors tried to save Rose's life, and I was sued for negligence and careless attitude. The whole crowd was calling me a bad mother, blaming me for everything that happened to Rose. I don't know how I managed to maintain custody. One qualifying attorney helped me to prove it was not my fault. Apparently, he broke the law and brought some lady who played the role of Rose's babysitter, who couldn't keep an eye on the kid. That was expensive, but we won, and the doctors managed to make a miracle. My daughter was alive and felt more or less well as a person could feel who'd fallen from the 6th floor. Certainly, she needed some expensive treatment and some recovery, but the most important thing was that she was alive. That time, we installed a metal plate inside her head to heal the skull fracture. I married the attorney, and we started to live together. He adopted Rose and we raised her. Everything was fine, except that Rose began to lose her memory as soon as she turned back home. She was losing not all of it, only those pieces which were related to the pain and the injury. My husband and I thought it was for the best. We just moved to another town, where no one knew about the tragedy. We were glad because Rose could tell somebody about the case, and we could end up in jail. Everything went just fine. My daughter grew up. She even treated my husband as her birth father, and hasn't spoken about the tragedy that didn't happen. We were happy for almost 10 years. Then she noticed that dang plate inside her head. I've almost forgotten about it, and that's why I missed the moment when Rose started to tell everyone about the UFO chip. Then, I was scared. I'm still scared. What if I'll tell my daughter the truth, and she'll just lose all her trust and turn her back on us? Or even worse, she would recall the day as it was, and my husband and I would go to jail. That's why I decided that she'd better fantasize about the UFO. It's safer for us. It's even funny in some way. And no one will know the truth. Even if Rose would remember, who would listen to the words of a mad person?
I don't know what to do. Really. Recently I feel so tired. almost exhausted. The point is that my daughter acts rather weird. No, she doesn't attack anyone, nothing like that. But she remains silent all the time. She doesn't speak to anyone. It started a year ago. Kelly grew up as a normal, happy child. She was so excited about everything. At least she seemed to be. Well, I guess I should say she adored me until her 13th birthday and talked to me all the time. And now she is always silent. I would think that it was me who hurt her somehow, but she doesn't speak not only with me, but with everyone else too. She doesn't speak with her mother either. And also with her friends and teachers, she doesn't study well enough. Her record card is full of Fs. And she used to be one of the best students. To be honest, I can't understand what happened. She turned from a sweet, sociable child into a cruel, silent girl. Every day she comes back from school, goes to her room, and turns the music as loud as possible. That's awful. A normal person can't exist properly with such music. I can't even hear my football games, although the commentators are rather noisy guys. Certainly, I tried talking to her. I caught her after classes for she not to sneak into her room. Can you guess what happened? It didn't help at all. I was speaking and she remained silent. She even didn't look at me. Kelly just stood there like a stone statue. It felt as if she was just waiting for me to finish my speech. When my patience ended and I felt that I'm done with this, I just ended everything and locked her in the room. Yes, I know it sounds weird, but what would you do if your daughter treated you so dismissively? She could at least argue with me, call me names, or just blame me. But no, she just didn't speak at all. And that was much worse. I could hardly bear that. My wife also tried talking to Kelly. She had the same result. There was no action, only disrespect, silence, and faraway looks. Now we're feeding her on the clock. We just leave the plate at her door. And she's having her breakfast at school. Fortunately, it's free. All her classmates think she's a weirdo. Recently, she was talking to everyone, and now she doesn't even answer teachers' questions. At first, they were mad, giving her Fs, kicking her out of the classroom, and calling us to the principal's office. Then they calmed down and decided to save their nerves. They don't ask her and just check her homework and test papers. That's it. Kelly's classmates make fun of her. Another thing is that they keep saying that it is me who hurt her. Look at me. How could I hurt my own daughter? Even more serious, they say that we cut Kelly's tongue. How could they think such nonsense? And she doesn't care. She's walking all silent and pays zero attention, as if she doesn't belong to this reality. It seems like she exists in her own world. But why, my dear, why? What happened that day? I'm a perfect father. I earn money for my family, don't have any bad habits, and I've always done everything for her from the time she was born. So it's not my fault. Maybe she has some love affair. A lot of teens have one. But why she keeps closing up? I definitely should look through her stuff. Maybe I'll find some clues there. And if I find something, that guy should be scared. For now, my wife and I decided to take Kelly to a psychologist. A good specialist would definitely help her. To be honest, I was thinking about more profound treatment. Maybe we should send her somewhere. I think that some sanatorium would be a good place for her. What if she's just tired? And as a last resort, I thought about the asylum. Don't look at me that way. Maybe doctors would be able to cure her, and she would stop all that. Sorry. I know that sometimes I become too excited about all this, but it is so hard to cope with Kelly. My lovely daughter turned from a normal kid into some crazy person. I don't know where one can help her, and only asylums come to mind. Her mother is exhausted because of all this. You should see her. She's lost some weight and has black circles under her eyes. Her hands are shaking. She can't even recognize her daughter because she worries too much. And my wife would probably agree to send our girl to the asylum. Otherwise, I'll have to send her as well. Don't be so surprised. That's legitimate. I was also thinking about the orphanage. That's in case there wouldn't be a reason for asylum. Of course, I love my dear Kelly, but is she still my daughter? How could that creature function properly in modern society and be a part of a decent family? I don't think it can. Kelly needs help. Someone should help her become normal again. Let's see what the psychiatrist will tell us. Though I honestly think that Kelly doesn't belong here. We will definitely bring her back when she'll feel better. Just look at her mother. How can we live like that? What do you think about my decision? What would you do being in my shoes?
Hi, my name is Kelly, and as I'm clearly demonstrating, I'm not mute. And Daddy dearest, not speaking doesn't have anything to do with my hearing. I heard perfectly well what my father just told you. My father pretends to be a saint. He acts like he wouldn't hurt a fly. I swear, he probably feels that the only thing his image is missing is a halo. But I'd love to hear how such a good father could so easily give up on his daughter and abandon her to an asylum. How could such a good person condemn his own flesh and blood to suffer alone and be told that I'm incomplete, that I need to be fixed? Seriously? Even with good intentions, how could anyone excuse that? But no, oh, no, my dear. His motivations are far from pure. Because of him, I've been silent for almost a year now. I've been too scared to talk. I can't speak to anyone. If I start, I fear I won't stop until I tell the whole truth about my father. And after what he's done to me, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a life sentence in prison. He's an awful person, the worst anyone could ever imagine, a truly terrifying man. If he finds me after I tell the world, I'm sure he will destroy me one way or another, just like he did with my mother. You think it was me and my silence that caused all of that? No, it was my father. She's been humiliated by him for years. He hits her every day. He's also cheating on her with different women all the time. And more than that, he brings them here, into our home. It's disgusting. And my mother, she has to put up with it. She's also terrified. Any opinion that might be her own has long since been beaten out of her. She's just a lifeless shell now. My father told her that he will take away everything from her, leave her on the streets with no means to support herself, no one to protect her daughter from his anger. That's why we try to live as quietly as possible. But I won't stand for it anymore. I don't have a choice. I have to stay silent and survive. That's all I've been able to do. You can't imagine how hard it's been for me, for us. I've lost everyone I love. I can't even talk to my own mother anymore. She's not even a person anymore. I'm just scared. I don't want to pretend that everything's fine in our family. I remain silent. It's all I can do to just get by day to day. It takes all of my strength just to live. The universe might be out to get me, but it will never take away my resolve to survive. Never. Well, he thinks I've just been a stupid, silent girl. I've been collecting evidence. I know that he isn't just a tyrant, he's also a thief. He's been stealing hard-earned money from my mother this whole time. She can't afford anything because she doesn't have enough money. So we can't run away. We're stuck. We're trapped. She doesn't live her life to the fullest. She just exists. I've tried to fight him, believe me, but he beat me hard. And he did it carefully so my face wasn't bruised. Though I could hardly breathe and it hurt to walk, to sit, to even lie down. That was the day I decided to stop talking. At least until they take me to a therapist. People around us are starting to worry, starting to question what's wrong with me. Why don't I talk? He's gonna have to do something about me eventually. And there I'll be able to tell the truth. I could put him in jail. I want him to pay for the sins he's done. I need him to feel the pain and the abandonment we felt. My father should know how it feels to be humiliated like me and my mother. I don't yet know for sure how we would live without his support, but I'm perfectly sure that we'd survive. We've lasted this long. I just need to hold out a little longer. I need someone with power to hear my story and the truth. Maybe they could be a witness in the trial against my father. This way he won't be able to sentence me to an asylum or to an orphanage like he keeps threatening. He won't be able to get rid of all of his dirty secrets so easily. The whole world will soon know who he really is and what he's done to his family. He should pay for how he's effed up my life, my mental health, and my everything. And he needs to finally pay. He needs to be locked away where no one can ever help him again. And now you too know my story. This is my first step in getting help. Please share it around the world. He needs to go far, far away. When I was little, I used to see myself as a freak. I was too ashamed to undress in front of other people. Hi, my name is Alice, and I'm a mutant. I have 4 hands, of which I am proud. Or at least now I am, but my parents insist on surgery. My deformity really looks quite creepy. Just imagine 2 ordinary hands attached at the wrists that are attached to your arms, right? And, well, then imagine another 2 hands, and that makes 4. The second pair are, well, they're little and underdeveloped, and they stick out of my back just beneath my shoulder blades. These little hands are the result of an error in my genetic code. It would be way more interesting if it was like my conjoined twin that I absorbed in the womb or something crazy like that, but unfortunately it's just some glitch in the program. I can't control them or do anything with their help, though they have prevented me from living a normal life. I couldn't go out unless I wore a thick hoodie. Beautiful dresses with an open back, tight shirts, spaghetti straps on a hot summer's day. All those clothes were off limits for me. I used to wear thick robes and sweaters, and I would look like an angel from the side, as if I was folding my delicate wings beneath my clothing. It doesn't take 2 brain cells to know that the other kids used to make fun of me, and that it was absolutely unpleasant. I was a weirdo, an outsider, shunned to forever sit in the last desk in the classroom, like a terrible traffic accident that you try not to look at, but still, you follow with the corner of your eyes, hiding your squeamishness and your own morbid curiosities. One day, in class, our history teacher decided to bring us to the museum on our field trip. There was this whole floor dedicated to the pantheons of Eastern gods. The first one that our teacher showed us was this statue of an Indian goddess. She was gorgeous, even as a statue. She looked like a beautiful woman who wore a belt made out of skulls. I know, so metal. And she also had 4 hands. I wanted to know everything there was to know about her at once. My classmates also got to know her story, and they stopped laughing at me from that moment on. What if I am the real incarnation of an ancient goddess? That was absolute nonsense, obviously, but still, kids believe even the silliest of stories. And I achieved something I had lost hope in for a long, long time. They started to respect me and even fear me. My self-esteem more than doubled that day. I was not just a broken person with a crooked genetic line or some freak of nature. I was an embodiment of an Indian god, and I didn't care if there wasn't even a spot of Indian blood in my family. I found something I could identify with. And through that experience, I learned to accept myself. I even started to love my weird, though extraordinary body. And this fascination with this goddess led me to talk to others for the first time, to learn new information about the Indian culture. For the first time, my future felt like it was my choice, not something I just had to sit on the sidelines for. I felt like I could turn this hideous curse and turn it into something beneficial, maybe even beautiful. But my family was against it. As soon as I got back from that field trip, I was butting heads with my family. Although my classmates respected me, heck, I even managed to make some friends. They were the weirdos of the class, but still, it was better than being alone. But my parents, no. They didn't want to say anything to my face. They tried to avoid the topic of redundant limbs. But also they were hiding my little hands in robes and coats and some crazy overflowing avant-garde dress. I would hear, "Oh dear, this is ugly. Oh, you're embarrassing us." Nobody wants to look at that body. Oh, we're just trying to protect you. That was what my mother kept saying instead of, oh, I don't know, literally anything kind or supporting. When I got older, they started talking about surgery. They didn't ask me whether I wanted to have surgery. They didn't ask me anything. They just took me to the appointment with the best surgeon in our city as soon as I became 16. The thought of being cut and pricked with needles scared me a lot. Then I read about the possible consequences of the surgery. I went into hysterics right inside of the doctor's office, and I started to beg my parents to leave everything as it was. I was happy, please. I didn't want to have huge scars on my back or be paralyzed for the rest of my life. However, my parents said that I made it all up, all of my fears, and that they were just irrational, and that there would definitely be a surgery. No one listened to me, as always. They just try to force me to come to terms with that fact. Once in a while, I have to go to different checkups supervised by my parents. The doctors smile at me, and my mother chastises me, hoping for a time when I will stop being an embarrassment to her. Seems like everyone is fine. Everyone except for me. But no one cares. I'm dreaming of running away. To be honest, I'm terrified. How can I know that the surgery will go well despite all the doctor's smiles and reassuring nods? But my adulthood is near, and then I will be able to take my health and my body under my own control. My parents even gave me money once to use on boys to influence my romantic side, as my mom told me. That was what made me want to run away. But they brought me back and placed me under house arrest. What kind of people do something like that to their own child? And I'm not talking about the house arrest. My parents even called for a therapist for him to convince me that I need the surgery. The question is, why did they wait to do it after my 16th birthday and not in my childhood when I felt I actually needed it? I can't believe that my parents care only about my appearance and not at all about the young woman that has to stay hidden under this baggy sweater.
I'm Alice's mother, and I hate the things she keeps doing to herself. I understand that the fault is genetic, but I'm waiting for her adulthood so that we can fix that monstrosity. Yeah, I know that partly the blame lies with my husband and me. It was our genes that made such a terrible joke. But we had a solution. From the very first days of her life, we knew that we needed to be patient and do surgery as soon as she turns 18. But how is one supposed to explain to their child that she is special, but only for a short period of time? I honestly tried not to notice my daughter's deformity. I thought she would grow older and it will work itself out. I just tried not to look at her for too long. I was a good mother. I even joined a community of parents with special kids. We drank tea, talked about things, and for those hours, I felt like my daughter doesn't have any issues. At least I saw that other parents struggled more. Their kids had malformations that were much worse and more visible. I don't know how Alice got out of control. Should I blame puberty? Alice stopped obeying us, and she even, oh, what a nightmare, started to be proud of her hideous limbs. She said they made her look like a goddess. The truth was, she rather looked like the queen of freaks, especially when she stopped hiding her back under clothing. Alice started to show everyone her tiny hands as if on purpose. She wore tight shirts, absolutely inappropriately revealing t-shirts. I asked her to stop doing that, but she said she needed to accept herself the way she was. Did she even think about me? How was I supposed to follow her when everyone knew whose daughter she was? Well, as soon as she turned 16, my husband and I took her to the clinic. I hoped they would speed up the process and all that nightmare would finally stop. Unfortunately, the doctors said that we needed to wait for Alice to become an adult. And more than that, she should make the decision and understand all the risks. Yeah, I can see how she changed her mind when she became 18. Alice buried herself in medical books instead of being thankful and begging doctors to stop her struggles. Then she made an awful hysteria. Alice screamed that she doesn't want to be operated on, and she's fine with her disability at the moment and wouldn't mind staying like that forever, as if she was just fine. Yes, I also read all those books. They really wrote that spine surgery is a dangerous thing and may cause paralysis, but the risk is only 40%. One can tolerate that, but eventually become beautiful and absolutely normal. From that moment, my husband and I spent all our free time trying to convince Alice to do the surgery. My husband said we can prove her mentally ill and sign papers for her as a last resort. Or we could kick her out of the house and let her live her own life, not bothering us with her weirdness. But I'm her mother, and I don't want to lose my girl because of her stupidity. That's why I'll try to do everything I can to make Alice say yes and not create problems for us. I even called for the therapist for him to use some medical terms and tell her there is nothing scary in that surgery. Millions of women do this every day to improve their appearance, and everyone is fine and beautiful. I hope my words still mean something to Alice. She's still young, and she should want to be beautiful for boys to like her for dating. And guys even don't look at her, except her freak friends. Maybe her first love would encourage her to do the surgery. Unfortunately, there were no boys who agreed to date her for money. All of them said she was horrible and creepy, and no money could make them risk their reputation. I told Alice about that, and she freaked out once again and tried to run away instead of being thankful. All in all, we are in the middle of confrontation at the moment, and I don't know who would win. I'm pretty sure that we'll definitely have a surgery whatever it takes. Alice would thank us for that when everything will be over. Her appearance is important, and without a decent look, she wouldn't manage anything.
Hey everybody, my name is Patricia, and I have recently learned a way to improve my life. Heads up though, it's not like entirely legal or ethical, but man do I love it so much. I'm blackmailing my stepfather. He and I have a shared secret, and so that my mother does not know it as well, my stepfather does whatever I order. Now I know what you're thinking. This doesn't sound very good on my end, but it's really convenient when you need pocket money, or you really want to go to your friend's house, but your mother won't let you. You just need to go to your stepfather and remind him of our secret, and now I have everything I could ask for, and even more. No, I'm sure I've given you all the wrong impression. If you have thought of something really bad and horrific, don't worry. In fact, our secret is really very simple. My stepfather's just cheating on my mom with a much younger girl. I'm sure things like this happen all the time. You see, I accidentally caught them and filmed everything on my phone. Of course, my stepfather tried to argue. He even once sneaked into my room to steal the phone, but he failed to do it. I had already copied all the information in advance and uploaded it to the cloud. I knew it would come in handy. So even losing the phone won't change anything. And Don will obey me as long as I wish. It's not profitable for him that Mom would find out about this secret of ours. And all because poor Donald, my mother's new love, is young, unemployed, and loves my mother's money very much. He, like me, knows perfectly well that my mother is loaded. She's so rich, even if she's practically an old lady by now. But she supports him and his spending habits. He buys expensive cars, suits, even fancy underwear and socks. All at my mother's expense. And in return, he just needs to be handsome and smile at her. I'm sure you can understand that the mistress does not quite fit into his contract, because rather reasonably, my mother does not like to share her men with other people. Even if she has no time to personally track where her young husband spends his time, she will no doubt still believe the photos and the videos without question. And Don really doesn't want to return to the lifestyle of a starving artist again, because living on the sofa in Gucci pajamas is way more comfortable than living in a barn without heating and wearing a torn sack. I can hear you now. You're probably saying, "But isn't she your mother? How can you do that to her?" Well, to be honest, my relationship with my mom is, not good.
I honestly don't feel sorry for her at all, because this was her choice, to marry Don and to keep him together with her favorite lapdogs. At least Hector and Lucy are useful. At least they look nice. Don, he's got no special talents other than listening to me. To be quite frank, I've never really seen my mother face to face. I mean, she probably took care of me when I was like a little girl or a baby or whatever, but by the time I was 5 years old, she was replaced in my life with a nanny. And it stayed that way forever after. Although I'm actually 15 years old now, I do have an excellent relationship with my nanny, and I love her dearly, but my mom? I once wanted her to be the closest person to me. I even cried at night and fought with the nanny. I had thought that it was because of her that my mother didn't come to me. But my mother worked all the time, made the money, built a business, and only once in a couple of months could she spend more than 15 minutes at breakfast with me. And now I'm practically an adult, and my mother constantly bails on me, even now. Her personal life is being built with Don. She chose to spend her time with him rather than me. Well, I say that, but it's being built in the same useless methods that she used with me, just ignoring him and pampering him with money instead of communicating properly. So she really has no room to complain that he found himself his own nanny. Besides, to be honest, Don is pretty cool in his own right. Before him, my mother had several pricks. They were condescending and always trying to command me around. At least this guy understands what can and cannot be said to a teenager. And before I blackmailed him, he used to cover my parties, went to school instead of my mom if I asked him to, and, stuff like that. So all I have now is just a guarantee that nothing will change. And, well, I mean, at least I don't need to beg him anymore, which is also pretty nice. Recently, for example, my stepfather tried to throw his weight around, telling me that a 15-year-old shouldn't drive a car. But I'm not some kind of fool or a kid. I wasn't going to crash his Porsche. So I drove down the highway and he sat next to me and only tried to boss me around from time to time. And if not for my blackmail, he would never have let me driven anyway. Oh, or another example that happened just the other day. My friends were having a party on someone's yacht. Mom and the nanny, of course, didn't want me to go there, but my stepfather drove me there personally. He also dropped some condoms in my purse, just in case. And then he lied to my mother that I was actually with a friend and did not want to see her because I felt offended at her. That's what I call convenient. Truly, sometimes I still think, what would happen if I had, like, a normal family? A dad and a mom who both actually cared about me. I'm sure families like that really do exist, and the kids who grow up in such families probably whine that they are constantly monitored. But if I'm being really honest, I think I would gladly change my carefree life with no restrictions, all that blackmail and those parties, for a real mother and a dad. Not like Dan, but like a real father. One who loves me and listens to me and who cares about me.
Hello, everybody. My name is Betty, and I'm completely horrified by what is happening in my family. Yes, I am Pat's mother, and yes, I'm not blind to her transgressions. At the moment when I had to make a choice, I thought that I didn't want to be a single mother from a trailer park, and I chose a business that just started to become successful. If only I could turn back time. In my opinion, I'd rather live in a trailer park, but with a loving family. So then, immediately after giving birth, I went into business. The company was just gaining momentum, yet no one believed that I would succeed. And my husband, Pat's father, was especially furious. He believed that his salary as an office clerk was enough for us. He did not understand my ambitions and the fact that I rarely stayed with the child. Usually my mom or my husband himself had to care for her. And I thought that my husband was just oppressing me, and I was pretty angry at him. As a result, we parted ways. More precisely, he just packed his things and went to the one who prepared dinner for him and ironed his shirts. And I was left with a daughter in my arms and a bunch of things that could not be postponed until later. So a nanny appeared in our house. I am infinitely grateful to Nancy, because it was she whom, while I was away, became a real mother for Pat. But apparently she could not completely replace me because my daughter grew up, not into a very good person. Yes, I completely understand that this is my fault and mine alone. I myself chose money and a career, not family. But I really believe that it was for our common good. And at first, I didn't want to see or hear anything. For me, my daughter was the perfect child, always dressed like a doll, educated and obedient. All conflicts, teenage problems, disobedience went to Nancy, and she clearly could not cope with all that. Well, more precisely, maybe a good spanking would help. But she was just a nanny and could not do that. So my daughter grew up and realized that everything was allowed as long as she pretended to behave like an angel. I learned the truth later, when it was too late to change anything. Pat wore the mask of an angel all the time, and everyone was sure that I had a golden child. But it turned out that this gold looked more like copper. Pat lied a lot and with gusto about her studies, about where she disappeared in the evenings, about her marks, about her grades, and I decided on a controversial move. I hired a private detective to find out the truth. At that time, Dan and I already lived together for several years, so the detective also spied on him as well. I didn't like the fact that he periodically disappeared somewhere, and the hotel bills were suspicious, to say the least. In fact, of course, there was no love between us. Well, what kind of love could have blossomed between a 45-year-old and a young guy who recently graduated from college? But at least could I count on a basic respect for everything I did for him? Apparently not. The detective worked well, and reading his report made me cry for the first time in 40 years. It did not fit into my head how two people closest to me could do this to me behind my back. Dan's betrayal was something that I clearly did not deserve. Yes, I could devote more time to him, but we have a purely contractual relationship. He could say that he fell in love and found another. I would understand. We would somehow solve this issue. And he preferred to hide and support some youngster with my money. My heart did not break from this, but it was horrible. But my daughter, my dear little son, the only joy in my life, even though I never told her about it, turned out to be rather a fiend of hell. At 15, she did things that never even occurred to me. Boys, alcoholic parties, running away from home, and most importantly, behind my back, she actively blackmailed Dan. That is, she knew that my man was cheating on me, but instead of coming to her mother, she chose to make money on it. I don't know how I can go on living now. I can't just return home and look into the eyes of those closest to me, who are actually much further from me than everyone else. It really is said that only those whom we let into our souls really hurt us. And the most horrible thing is that nothing can be fixed. What do you think about this story and its characters? Leave some likes, share your opinion on the matter in the comments, share the video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for new and exciting stories.